يا الله يا رب العالمين.
Welcome to the Ummah Talk podcast with me, Fatima Barkatulla.
Let the Ummah rise again.
In this podcast, I speak to scholars, experts, leaders in their field about some of the big issues facing the Muslim community worldwide, as well as your local Muslim community here, especially in the West. So please tune in. You can catch the podcast on Muslim Central Podcasts, which is available on all sorts of audio platforms. The podcast episodes will also be available on YouTube. So do share the episodes. Let me know what you think about the ideas and the topics that we discuss in the episodes. The revival of the message of Islam, the revival of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a responsibility, and it's the responsibility of every single generation to strengthen and pass on something better to the next generation. And I hope that we can begin to do that. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Dear brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of Ummah Talk with me, Fatima Barkatullah. Alhamdulillah, today I have a special guest. My guest actually happens to be my professor from university. So as some of you know, I've been studying the MA in Islamic law at the School of Oriental and African Studies, Soas, at the University of London. And Professor Mashood Baderin is the convener and also my lecturer for this for the past year. So assalamu alaikum, Professor Baderin.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So Professor, jazakallah khairan for joining me today. There's a lot of things that I really want to bring kind of to the consciousness, I would say, of the Muslim community. Especially here in Britain and in Western countries. And I think that Islamic law, as it is in academia, and human rights and Islamic law is an area that actually Muslims know very little about. And so, like, for example, during this Ramadan, when the things were going on in Palestine, right? I saw people, making jokes or just making kind of comments about the UN, right? About human rights, the double standards, and also about the OIC as well, the Organization of Islamic, is it cooperation? Yeah. Yes. And, generally Muslims have quite a negative image of these things. And so I thought I'd invite you, because I think you've changed the way a lot of us, especially those of us who came from like Islamic studies, classical Islamic studies backgrounds, and were studying with you. You've changed the way we think of this subject, I think, and how we appreciate the nuances, and actually that things are not as black and white as we might have thought. So, Professor, could we begin by, just so that my listeners, understand more about you, with you telling us a little bit about your background in Islamic studies and how you kind of got interested in human rights and Islamic law?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihil kareem. I need to start by thanking you, Fatima, for bringing me on the program. I really appreciate it. I think it's a very good opportunity, as you said, to perhaps contribute to a better understanding of the relationship between human rights and Islamic law, and also the attitude of Muslims, or what the attitude of Muslims ought to be about it. Now, as you introduced, my name is Mashood Baderin. I'm originally from Nigeria, and my background, I'm a Muslim. My parents are Muslims, and as we do know, in Nigeria and elsewhere in the Muslim world, parents normally will start to inculcate Islamic education into their children right from the beginning. I started my Islamic studies right from the beginning when I was in elementary school. As I said, I mean, every Muslim parent will want to inculcate Islamic education into their children right from the beginning. So while I was in elementary school, that's exactly when I started my Islamic education as well. We go to the Western elementary school in the morning, you come back home in the afternoon, you eat, you dress, then you go to the madrasa. So, I mean, and the madrasa in the local mosque, where we learn the Quran, you learn to read the Quran, memorization of it, you learn some hadith, and general Islamic knowledge. Now, after my secondary education, I then went to a formal Nizamiya Islamic school, I mean, which sometimes is also called Alimiya, which is a formal school, I mean, in Nigeria, in Lagos, called Darud Dawa Til Islamiyya Wal Irshad. When I mean, and it was a formal, full Islamic higher education whereby you learn all the sciences, the Quran, the usul, hadith, tafsir. I mean, even many of the, I mean, adab, Arabic language, even geography, all those subjects. I mean, hisab, mathematics, again, which I already learned in Western education. We still learned it, I mean, using the Arabic materials. Then when I finished that, I went to university. I went to university in northern Nigeria first to do Arabic and Islamic studies at one of the northern universities called University of Maiduguri. So when I finished my Arabic and Islamic studies, I went in again to another university in the north called Uthman Danfodio University, named after Uthman Danfodio.
Sorry, who was he?
Uthman Danfodio was he's very well known universally. He was an Islamic revivalist. He was who revived Islam in northern Nigeria, in the sense that, I mean, you know, most of the emirs and the kings in northern Nigeria then, he did similar, he's usually compared to what Sheikh Abdul Wahab did in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
You know, yeah, so he reformed Islam in Nigeria by, you know, reviving it and also calling all the Umara, the emirs of the north, back to Islam. So it's usually called the Mujaddid of Islam in Nigeria. And he has written so many books. I mean, there are so many books. If you check him, Uthman Danfodio, outside Uthman Danfodio, you'll find a lot of information about him. I mean, many people who study history of Islam in Nigeria know about him. Now, so this university is named after him. And it's one of the universities in Nigeria that has a specialization, a double major in English common law and the Shari'ah combined. It's a 4-year program, so it's a double major program. All other universities just do contemporary legal studies for 3 years. So I chose purposely to go there because of my Islamic background, but I wanted to also do law. So I went in there, did my 4 years, and I had a first class in English common law and Sharia. Perhaps, I mean, what assisted me was my Islamic background, really. Then after that, I had to go into the law school and qualified as a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. I started practicing law in Nigeria because Nigeria, you know, it's a dual, it's a pluralist legal system. Islamic law applies, customary law applies and English law applies. So this is why I wanted to cover all ground. This is why I went for the double major. Then after that, after practicing in Nigeria for a while, I came to the United Kingdom. I applied to study international law at the University of Nottingham. So I got a scholarship to come to study at University of Nottingham in the early 90s. So I came and I did a master's in public international law at University of Nottingham. By the time I was finishing up, a lot of things came up during we did in the international law class, we did human rights, international criminal justice, European law and things, and a lot of things came up in relation to Islamic law, particularly in the international criminal law class, and also European human rights law, particularly in relation to women's rights. So it first started my interest. I raised a lot of issues in class, and perhaps maybe what do you call it? My professors got interested in perhaps maybe my background knowledge, and they indicated whether I was interested in doing a PhD. My intention was just to come and do 1 year of masters and go back. But when they proposed, I said, fine. I said, well, and I did a proposal. It was on so I did a proposal, a PhD proposal, based on everything that has transpired in my international law master's class. I did a proposal trying to, a comparative study on human rights and Islamic law, particularly in Muslim majority countries. So the thesis was Muslim majority countries between Islamic law and international human rights law. So I finished on time, 3 years, passed without corrections, and eventually the book was published. It has become very popular. In relation to this. So since then, when I finished, I stayed back. I was given a teaching appointment in Nottingham, but I didn't stay there for long. And I moved on to Bristol and then to Brunel. Then in 2007, I moved to Soas, and I've been at Soas since 2007, teaching Islamic law, human rights and Islamic law, and also, a course called Law and Development in Africa. So that's just about.
That's so interesting. Like the book you're talking about that you said became popular is it the International Human Rights and Islamic Law?
That is correct.
But yeah, published by
OUP.
Oxford University Press. Yeah. So Jazakallah khairan for telling us about your background. So by the way, why did you think of Britain? Like, is there some, like, do Nigerians, so I'm very sorry, I've got very poor knowledge about Nigeria and Nigerians, but do you learn English from a young age? Like, is it one of your languages?
Well, English is the lingua franca of Nigeria. This some of the remnants of colonialism. Nigeria is a multilingual country. It's a multi-religious, multilingual country. It's very, polarized in the sense that, it's similar to Indonesia and Malaysia, actually. In a very conservative estimation, there are more than 300 different languages spoken in Nigeria. And the major ones are considered to be 3: Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo. Now, because of, in order to bring everybody together, English is considered to be the language, the lingua franca of the state. Now, you won't believe this, even in the courts, English is the language of the courts. Now, you find litigants come to court, they understand the language of one another. The judge also understands their language. Yet, the trial has to be conducted in English. If they don't understand English, even though they understand one another, they will have to find an interpreter for them. What the litigants are saying, the judge understands, but he can, because English is the language of, they have to go through English in order to record everything. So sometimes you find out that, when the litigant says something and the interpreter interprets wrongly, because the judge has heard what the litigant is saying, the judge may be asking the interpreter, do you think you understood what he said properly? So English is the formal language. Right from the primary school to secondary school, we speak Queen's English right from the beginning.
Okay. So do you think that's why you thought of Britain as the place where you would come to study?
Well, most, Nigerians do come to Britain. Some go to the United States, but the educational system, because of, Britain colonized Nigeria. So the educational system is based exactly on the, UK system. Although there have been some changes about it's the same system that is applied. So usually it's the colonial link and the educational system that sort of, influences when Nigerians want to go abroad for study. Mostly they come to the UK because the American system is quite a little bit different from that of Nigeria.
So in that sense, I guess it's a bit like Indians as well, right? Like
exactly similar.
Yeah.
Very, very similar.
So like my dad as well, he came to Britain in the 70s as a student as well. So yeah. Okay. So at this stage, would you say, like, so you're writing your PhD, or just before you're writing your PhD, you're getting into understanding international law, human rights law? Were you a bit skeptical, would you say, like, with regards to any kind of collaboration or similarities between human rights law and how it relates to Islamic law?
Well, my master's education in the UK, my postgraduate education in the UK, as you rightly mentioned, further opened my eyes. But I was not completely new to international law, human rights, and also perhaps maybe the relationship with Islamic law. I did public international law at undergraduate level anyway. In my LLB, I did public international law, and I was so much interested in it. And also, while we were doing public international law, I also did Siyar. We called it Islamic Law of Nations.
Siyar, yeah.
Yes, we call it Islamic Law of Nations, Islamic Law of War and Peace. So even at that level, I was seeing a lot of, areas of common grounds and areas of differences between public international law and Siyar. And also, when we do constitutional law in Nigeria, we do, there are fundamental human rights provisions in the Nigerian constitution, which we studied. And there was a lot of debates in relation to some of the issues that were being raised. In relation to the interpretation of equality provisions in the constitution and things like that. And those of us who have studied Islamic law, there was always a debate about this ongoing. But during that time, I must say, I was looking at it, really very defensively, from not really objectively from an Islamic point of view. I was also quite skeptical then, thinking, looking at it in the context that, well, because of the colonial history of Nigeria, we're looking at everything from the colonial perspective, indicating that all these structures are put in place in order to attack Islam and things like that. Was because I studied in northern Nigeria. That was the narrative then.
Right. Yes.
So it was really in my mind. Now, when I came to the UK and I started looking at these things and went in depth, I started looking at things a little bit more objectively in relation to the interpretations, the structures in place to ensure that human rights are applied and things like that. So I would say that actually my studying at postgraduate level exposed me to a better literature, much more understanding, and also perhaps I became quite a little bit more objective than I used to be. I looked at things much more critically, particularly from the point of view of application. Because while I was here, I was looking at things from the point of view of faith, of faith that, well, the Quran talks about equality and things, but I never questioned myself really, okay, why is it not happening? If, we just believe, the Quran says that, well, you should treat people well, you should, treat people with dignity. There are verses in the Quran which we always cite to indicate that, well, Islam has a better system. But I never questioned that, okay, why is it not, where are the mechanisms for implementing it? When people don't do it, if these things are meant to be visible here in our lives, if people don't do it. So, I started questioning that here when I understood the mechanisms of what we call the Western international human rights system, because there are mechanisms in place. If you do not comply, there are ways by which the implementational system and things like that. So that then opened my eyes, indicating that, well, perhaps we could also use that to challenge the Islamic perspective of it. That, okay, now these rules are there. If people don't perform, do we just wait and say that, well, okay, everything will be decided in the hereafter? Now, if God has indicated in the sources of Islam that, I mean, we could treat one another well in the world, respect people's dignity. Now, if people don't do that, I mean, will it just be fair to say that, well, okay, people can do whatever they want in the world, no, don't follow those rules, and then nothing happens in the world, and we just wait until the hereafter? So I started, I mean, a lot of these things started, then, so that's how, I mean, that's the objectivity that came into, so I started looking at it from both perspectives, and I sort of felt that, well, the rhetorics were not enough. The faith aspect of it were not enough to say that, well, God has said we should do this. My question was, what if people don't do it? How do we get it done here?
Right. So, you know, what I think is quite interesting about your background, or unique, is that you had both the classical as well as the kind of, you could say, on the ground legal kind of training from an early stage. And I think what happens mostly in the Muslim world, or has been happening in the past, is either people are lawyers or they study law, right, as a kind of separate thing, or they study classical Islamic studies. And so there ends up being this kind of chasm, I guess, between the two.
That's right.
And also this alienation, because, like, as somebody who studies Alamiya studies, or even advanced Islamic studies, Sharia studies, classically, you would not really get exposed to the realities of, you know, how law plays out on the ground, unless you're embedded within a legal system, right?
That's right. Yeah, that is very true. And that is what perhaps, I mean, the realities on the ground. And, you know, when so many bad things, I mean, happen, you then begin to question seriously, indicating that, okay, I mean, and there were so many bad things, I mean, happening then in the 20th century, towards the end of the 20th century, and they still happen. You know, I mean, a lot of the time when these things happen, in my traditional view, then we'll cite verses of the Quran that, you know, Zahar al-Fasad fil Barri wal Bahar, that, I mean, bad things have occurred on the Bima Kasabat Aydin Nas because of what the hands of people have done. And then the Quran says that, well, this happens so that they will return back, think and return back. But a lot of the time, people don't reflect. They don't return back. They don't return back to God. They continue doing this, perpetuating it. So that's, you know, sort of, I mean, enable me to question that, well, there should be mechanisms. And when I started, I mean, looking into it, I mean, you see this in my research, I identified that actually even under classical Islamic law, there were mechanisms like the Mazalim and other things, tribunals, I mean, Wilayatul Mazalim, that were put in place even during classical time, you know, in order to ensure that, you know, when things go wrong, there's a mechanism. But all these, a lot of the time, you know, people don't, I mean, emphasize them. And I thought they were very important in relation to areas of common ground between, I mean, Islamic law and international human rights law practice particularly.
So I guess one, like in your book, Islamic Law, a very short introduction, you have a section, chapter 8, international law, Siyar. And right. I think one of the things that you keep highlighting throughout your books, which I found very interesting, and I don't think many Muslims realize, is that the idea that human rights and even international law is like a Western thing, right? Or that the West were the pioneers of this, is actually a myth. And you highlight, for example, here that a Siyar was a precursor for the development of contemporary international law. And because, you know, Muslims right from the beginning had laws regarding war and peace and, you know, the rights of human beings, even as non-Muslims living in Muslim majority lands. And he also highlights about human rights law that respect for human dignity is one of the most, you know, it's the established universal norm identified as al-ma'ruf under Islamic law. So what I've noticed that you keep highlighting is that we Muslims need not look at a lot of these concepts as Western inventions or things that the West pioneered. Actually, a lot of these things, we had in place in the past, or we had at least the precursors to them.
That's right. That's a very, good question in relation to, and it relates to, the source or the beginning of human rights. It's not only Muslims who tend sometimes to say that, who claim that human rights are a Western creation. Sometimes, many Western writers also tend to want to claim that human rights are a Western creation. And in my book on international human rights and Islamic law, I did address this, that, the history of human rights law, if one, it can have it has what I call a longer history and a shorter one. Now, if you look at it from the longer history perspective, human rights, would be said to have evolved from the concept of natural rights. Whereby the shorter history of it, perhaps maybe people refer to 1948, when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. Now, my argument usually is that, human rights is just, it's a phrase, it's a name, signifying a system, a concept for protecting human dignity. But the concept, the idea that, human beings have rights and that, they should be protected, existed, long before 1948. Human rights, although the term might be new, but it's not certainly a new idea. Some commentators will say human rights started with the idea of natural rights, which goes back, ages. And some will say it's new business that started in 1948 with the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, in relation to Islam, one will find that the idea of protecting human dignity has always been there. And first, if you look in the Quran, if you look in the Quran chapter 17, verse 70, it's indicated clearly there, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that we have certainly dignified the progeny of Adam, that human beings have dignity inherent in them. And if you look at the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights itself, it didn't create human rights. If you read it, if you look at the preamble, it says human dignity is every human being has an inherent, dignity in them, which is that it just recognized it, that human beings have an inherent dignity in them. So if you look at it from that point of view, it's only recognizing what is already there in human beings. And my point is, the Quran identifies this, that human beings are created with dignity, and we should respect that dignity. And even if you look in the classical writings, you find out that the concept of the rights of the human beings, and Mawardi says this in his Kamus Sultani, calling the Hukuk Adamiyin, that is the rights of the humans. Even though in contemporary Arabic writings they use the term Hukuk al-Insan, but you'll be able to see that, similarly, as I was saying, that if you want to trace the history of human rights backwards, you will trace it back to natural rights or the rights of humans before we now call it human rights today. Similarly, Hukuk al-Insan, as used in contemporary Arabic writings, if you trace it back, you find out that, classical scholars were using a different terminology called Hukuk Adamiyin, that is the rights of humans or natural rights. So they have a similar history. Although the West has been really forefront in promoting the universalization of it in contemporary terms, They have been at the helm of affairs, pushing and promoting it. But my perception is that the idea, you find the idea in all civilizations really, that human beings must be respected. It may have been violated in practice, but no civilization will tell you that, well, in our own civilization, our own civilization says that human beings must not be treated with dignity. People or leaders or rulers might have violated that rule, but anytime it is violated, we find that people frown at it. That's why it is sort of natural right. Nobody wants to be treated badly. That's the idea. It's an idea. No human being wants to be treated badly. They may not have power to, resist it, but they will frown at it. They will feel bad at that. Why are you treating me like this? And that is the fundamental primary idea of human rights. So
right. The rights due to you simply for being a human being, right?
That's right, exactly. You don't need to do anything. It's the right that is inherent to you. You are a human being. You have to be treated like a human being. That's just the idea of human rights.
So what is, for people who are not familiar with like the modern human rights regime, when they think of human rights usually today, they, and especially like amongst Muslims, sometimes human rights has a bad kind of, I would say, reputation, mainly because people don't understand, I think, what exactly is the significance of, for example, the 1948 declaration, and what role did Muslim countries play in kind of collaborating and creating those treaties? Because I think what a lot of Muslim commentators and sometimes they assume is that human rights regimes in modern times are something that have been imposed, right? Rather than seeing them as basically treaties, right? Treaties that countries are free to sign up to. I think they're seen as a kind of imposition, although I guess you could say that there is politics at play, and sometimes there is, like, obviously political pressure that is going on behind the scenes. Could you please introduce, like, our audience to what was the significance of 1948 and modern human rights regimes and Muslims' interaction with them?
Thank you. For a clear understanding, where we are today, as I start, human rights has what I call moral legitimacy. Now, it also, when we talk about moral legitimacy, as I said, if you look at it, don't torture people, treat women well. When people commit offenses, give them a fair hearing. All these, you, even without laws, anybody who has a clear moral sense, it resonates with them. And that is the moral legitimacy of it. It has a moral legitimacy. That's one thing. But the truth of the matter is that, if, for example, people would take, every human being would take responsibility, and every human being would do that which is moral, there will be no need for laws to enforce them. But because of the fact that, morals, if you just say, well, okay, no, we don't need laws, everybody will know what is right. Human history has indicated that that is not the case. The 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights became necessary, after the Second World War. When all those atrocities, people knew that, the moral legitimacy of human rights, moral legitimacy of doing what is right was there. But states, the power of the state sometimes is overwhelming. When people are in authority, they can use the power of the state or power of rulership to oppress people. So for that reason, you found out that the international community then came together and decided that, well, okay, we know this moral legitimacy of human rights, but then we have to put it in a document, enforceable, so that, everybody knows what it is. And a lot of the time you find out that, many writers will say that, well, Muslim countries did not participate. If you look at the history of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, even though many countries were still not independent then, they were under colonial rule, yet many countries that were not, many countries that had already attained independence were part of it. Saudi Arabia was at the table, Egypt was at the table, Pakistan was at the table. I mean, many Muslim majority countries were there. Even though at the end of it, due to some sections of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Saudi Arabia abstained from adopting it. But that doesn't mean that they didn't support the adoption. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was the first time that, I mean, the clear, specific content of what we call human rights was set out. Because a lot of the time we just say human rights, human rights. Human rights is a general term. In putting it in a legal form, we have to identify what the contents of it, the right to what, the right to this, the right to that. So Universal Declaration of Human Rights gave the general human rights some content. So we know that human rights include, I mean, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, right to work, for example, right to good health, for example. So when we talk about human rights generally, sometimes, I mean, people may not understand what it is. So when you look at the instruments give it content. But when we talk about human rights, this is what we mean. And this is why sometimes it is problematic when people say that, well, human rights and Islam, human rights are imposed on Muslims. My argument usually is that which human rights are you talking about? Do you get it? I mean, a lot of the time it is better to deal with these issues on a right-to-right basis.
Right, with all the details.
Exactly. There could be problem with some rights, and there will be no problem with some rights. Now, for example, I mean, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has nearly 30 specific rights identified in there. Saudi Arabia only objected to 2 of those rights. It was in full agreement with about 26 of them, of those rights. So just to say that, well, I mean, so sometimes it's misleading to say that where human rights are just, when people raise this question, I ask them, okay, which right exactly are you talking about? Always and look at it from on a right-to-right basis and then debate where there are differences, I mean, in relation to a particular right, rather than just condemning the whole of human rights as something of the West imposed on Muslim countries.
Right. And also, I think people don't appreciate that actually there is a lot of scope for, including different interpretations, you could say, of the various rights, right? Like depending on your country, depending on your culture, there is small print basically, and there are countries that have reservations or they, add some kind of detail that they would like to be acknowledged, etc., etc. So it's not like a monolithic set of rules that are not open to interpretation, right?
Yes, I mean, that's what the second part, I mean, the third leg of it, because I said human rights has a moral legitimacy. It also has a legal, basis for it when it is put into declarations or treaties which are binding, which states sign up to voluntarily. The third part of it is the political. I mean, it has also a political stem to it. And it's the political aspect of it which is sometimes problematic, and you find there is a lot of disagreement in that perspective. Now, when we talk about not only even Muslim countries, not only Muslim countries compared to Western countries, even some Western countries, you find out that, I mean, the details of particular rights, they may have some differences. I mean, one of the basic rights that everyone talk about is the right to life. The right to life, you look at it, everybody will say, yes, the right to life. I mean, it prohibits arbitrary taking of life. Now, you find out that, I mean, there are some Western countries, I mean, even in the definition of it, when you say the right to life, if you go into the detail, there are some disagreement. When does life start? Some Western countries, I mean, there's difference between them. For example, if you say maybe the child in the womb, for example, Would you, I mean, and this brings the issue of abortion rights and things into, I mean, even Western countries, there are some Western countries that are differed in relation to when does life start. Some indicate they recognize the fact that life starts from the womb. Some says no, until a child is born. So you find out that, I mean, if you look into the details, one will be able to see that sometimes, I mean, in the interpretations, there could be the scope. This is what we call the scope. The scope could differ. Talk about, yes, talk about the right, freedom of expression, for example. Freedom of expression, everybody agrees on it. But if you look in the instrument, sometimes, I mean, the state could restrict it. And it, for example, in relation to, I mean, public order and public morality. You know, now the scope of public order and public morality sometimes differ from country to country in relation to what a state might accept as, okay, you could say this. Now, if some state might consider a particular statement to be against the public order of their own country, and the scope in another country might differ. So you find out that sometimes one need to look into the details rather than just saying that, well, human rights is a Western idea that Muslims cannot look to at all. Human rights are good things. If you look at it from the moral principles, as I said, you can, for example, it's about dignity, karama. It's about freedom, huriya. It's about humaneness, insaniya. You have all these terms even in Islamic, I mean, jurisprudence, equality, musawa. You find all these there. Beneficence, ihsan, responsibility, mas'uliyah. All these are there. I mean, all these principles that you find, I mean, in human rights, you find it, I mean, all in, I mean, it talks also about cooperation, justice, welfare. So, I mean, if anybody says human rights are things we do not want, then perhaps maybe they don't understand what it is. Human rights is needed by every human being wherever we are against the power of the state. Otherwise, rulers and the state will be really oppressing people wherever they are.
But you have to admit, Professor, that even within different human rights camps, West and East, there are people who do consider it to be a project. You know, it is, like, for example, even in Western academia, there are a number of books and a number of voices that say, well, actually, you know, yes, this human rights is a way for us to spread liberalism and individualism, right, all over the world. And they do see it as a liberal project. On the other hand, there are Muslims who, you know, see that, well, okay, you know, some aspects of human rights are good. We're not saying that they're not good, but fundamentally, the philosophy behind human rights is very individualistic. Whereas for Muslims, our worldview is God-centric, not human-centric, right? So in that sense, in the kind of core philosophy behind human rights, and also some of the agendas that different people have, you must admit that there is a difference of opinion there, right?
Well, I mean, when we start talking about philosophies, I mean, everybody can bring, I mean, yeah, because philosophy differs. The way we perceive things do differ across the universe. Now, when we start bringing philosophy in, it definitely there will be differences. Now, you find out that, I mean, yes, sometimes there are these categorizations whereby you say, well, the West, the human rights perspective in the West is individualistic. And then in relation to the East, and not only in Muslim countries, even in Africa, I mean, the African perspective will also say that, well, it's communitarian rather than... Now, in my own writings, I mean, these are, some of these arguments are earlier debates, which, I mean, many writers, including myself, are actually challenging in our writings. Because, I mean, you cannot simply create a divide. For example, when we talk about individualism and communitarianism, you cannot really create a divide. Yes, it does exist philosophically, but in relation to human, you cannot create a clear divide between the two. Now, I talked about the issue of, if you look at the instrument, I talked about the issue of, I mean, freedom of expression, freedom of religion. If you look at all the instruments, these two rights and other rights are not absolute. They are subject to what is called public order. Public order is the right of the community, the right of, even in the West. Now, your individual right is usually subject to public order. If it goes against public order, you cannot enjoy that right. So if the West was completely individualistic, they will not identify what is public order. They will not care about public order. It's just about my individual right, individual right. Yes, you have your individual right, but if it goes against public order, your individual will have to be subjected to public order. That's communitarianism. You know, so, I mean, for anybody to say that, well, the West is completely individualistic, they are not looking at it in detail. Because you cannot just, you know, for example, I mean, even in day-to-day activities, there are rules about how you drive on the road. It is to protect the public, to protect the community. You cannot say, no, I have my individual right, I can drive on the right, even though the law says you can only drive on the left. You know, so a lot of the time we subject our individual rights also to communal rights in order to protect everyone.
There are some things, for example, in Islam that are considered intrinsically wrong, you know, I mean, regardless of public order. So, for example, Sabbullah wa Sabbu Rasul, you know, certain types of speech, certain types of, you know, insulting God, etc., regardless of whether it causes public order problems, for Muslims, that would be a crime, right? Like that would be something that they would want to prohibit. So I guess what you're highlighting is, okay, but if we're collaborating with other countries to come to some kind of consensus, to collaborate on treaties, to agree on certain fundamental rights, we can't think abstractly. Is that what you're saying? And we have to think pragmatically in like on what actually applies on the ground. And is that what you're saying? Because obviously philosophically there is a difference there.
Yes, there is. I mean, what I'm saying is, I mean, you refer to it's related to what we were saying before. I mean, I'm trying to, as much as possible, emphasize the fact that, you know, there are a lot of common grounds. A lot of the time, the areas of differences, the way people emphasize it, I mean, sometimes undermines the areas of common ground. There's a lot of areas of common ground.
The now, good, basically the good.
Yes, if you talk about the issue of, I mean, Sabbullah or Sabbu Rasul in relation to, now, the reason why we cannot do that, for example, in Muslim countries, is that because it is a crime. Islamic law says it is a crime. Do you get the point? Right. Now, if anybody commits, then that person has to follow the process of the law. And this is part of, I mean, when we talk about public order, even no matter how we say it, I mean, laws are made to protect public order. Now, if the Quran says don't do this, prohibit this, it's a crime. I mean, because, I mean, it goes against the morals and the order of Muslim, I mean, Islamic, I mean, societies. So if anybody does it, if anybody says anything that contradicts that, they have to go through the process of the law because it is a crime of that country. Similarly, I mean, the UK may not have, for example, the West may not have a law that says you cannot abuse God, you cannot abuse the Prophet. But for example, if the UK says that, well, in their own community or maybe in society, maybe you cannot shout fire, fire in a public hall. If you do that, it's a crime. And that is if you do it, you go through the law, you know. And this is why when we talk about, I mean, the subjectivity of rights, freedom of expression, for example, to certain public orders. When we talk about those public orders, it includes the criminal or things that are prohibited in particular communities. Now, you cannot just say, well, I mean, it's if a state say that, okay, those limitations are usually limitation that must be provided. If you look in the treaties, the limitation, they are subject to this limitation. The limitations must be provided by law. You know, they might, I mean, as long as the law that says you cannot do this, then people have to abide by the law. And the human rights have provided rules for that. So when it's not just that perhaps maybe anybody would just say, now, I mean, and this is one of the problems in relation to what usually happens in many Muslim societies. Now, me too, and I do challenge that a lot of the time. Even when people commit what is usually called blasphemy, when people say that, well, somebody has abused the prophet and things like, it is not, even it's not a fire brigade approach. Islam doesn't say that, well, okay, you can then pounce on them and start beating them and kill them. No.
Of course.
I mean, you have to go through the process of law. You are not the enforcer of the law. It's not a public thing that, well, if anybody does it, you be the judge and the jury. You accuse them, yes, you have done this, and then I must punish you immediately. Any society that allows that, it will go into chaos. People will accuse people wrongly and start beating them. It doesn't, human rights does not support that. Even if somebody has committed, they've violated that rule, it has to go through the due process of the law. There must be a law that prohibits it, goes through due process, and the person might be found guilty or maybe innocent.
Yeah, and I think what that highlights is that law is not really enough. Do you know what I mean? Like law has its place, and legal instruments, they play a part, but mob rule can take over if there is a lack of, for example, education, a lack of a lack of understanding of what exactly Islamic law says about certain things, right? So I guess education and law have to go hand in hand.
Oh, definitely. I mean, education is very, very important. Even in relation to human rights, I mean, education is important, because what actually makes human rights work is where people are, people know their rights, people are educated about it, and they can stand up for it. And when people, actually, even when the state knows that people are familiar or they are aware of their rights, you find out that in any society that, based on the level of orientation and education of the populace, you find out that, I mean, the abuse of human rights will normally be limited, because the states know that the individuals know their rights. But in a state where people are not familiar about their rights, what the law provides for them and things like that, a lot of the time you find organs of state will commit violations and they go scot-free. People don't know. And this is what I mean, for example, when I'm teaching human rights, I give one example. I say in many, societies, for example, maybe London, the street of London, because of the fact that, even small children, I say a lot of the time, if a police officer stops a teenager in the street, because of what they have been taught, what they have been exposed to, the likely response of the teenager will be, why are you stopping me? Because they know that they cannot just be stopped without a reason. And I say, if you go now to another society where people do not even know their rights, and I have seen that in many parts of the developing world, even an old person, not a teenager, if the police stops them, the first thing they will start doing is, they will start begging the police officer, even without even knowing, without asking why they were stopped. So the police officer will continue doing it because they know that these people don't know their rights. So education is really very, very important. So,
well, Professor, there's two things that I want to ask you about. One is, okay, I would love to hear about your experiences, because I think your philosophy, or your way of reconciling Islamic law with human rights is probably couched in the fact that you have been on the ground. You've actually been to, you were an inspector for Sudan, right? With the UN. So you've actually seen and witnessed, whereas we're talking about it on an abstract theoretical level, you've witnessed and seen the beneficial effects of some of these human rights treaties on the lives of real people, right? On the lives of Muslims even, right? So I would love to hear, first of all, about what you saw and why you think human rights are beneficial to Muslims. Because, there is this kind of idealistic view that some people have, which is that, we have to just wait for this perfect caliphate to come along, right? And when the perfect caliphate comes along, there'll be justice on earth and people's rights will be looked after. But I think what you're highlighting in your work is that no matter what the situation of the wider Muslim Ummah is. Justice, human dignity, these things, they need to be fought for, and we need to strive to achieve them in the here and now as much as possible, right? And I think that's where your kind of advocacy for human rights comes from. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, to a large extent. Now, you mentioned the Sudan and also what I saw. I mean, that's a very interesting point. I was the independent expert for the situation of human rights in the Sudan. We know Sudan was going through what we call, special measures under the United Nations. So they will normally appoint. It was not only Sudan. There were many countries, who were under this regime because of what was happening there. Sudan was going through, has been in war for a very long time. I mean, even before the separation of South Sudan. Now, one interesting thing, let me tell you. I was appointed, and people do, you apply for it, and there were many candidates, and I was appointed because of my area of research, my expertise in relation to the relationship between human rights and Islamic law, and I've written on it.
Okay.
Those credentials, made me get the appointment. And because Sudan is a Muslim majority country, and they do, it culturally, Islamic law applies there, and even their criminal law provisions contain elements of Islamic law and things like that. Now, you'll be surprised to hear this. And this is, one of the ways I had to educate somebody. When I was appointed, I have a very, respected friend who is, a very well-established, Islamic scholar in Nigeria. So when they heard about it, he was trying to say it in a joke, but I took it seriously. And I had to really educate him. He said, "Oh, I heard you have been appointed as the independent expert for the Sudan, the UN." I said, "Yes." So he said, "Okay, now you have become an agent of the West."
Oh no!
This is exactly what he said. He was just trying. He was saying it in a jovial way, as we say. I said, "No." I said, "No, you have to be careful with that. I don't take this lightly." And I had to really educate him that, look, we have to see these things. There are so many things happening in the Sudan, and there must be some sort of, monitoring mechanism. And after I have written I would then send him each of the reports that I wrote. Then eventually he said, I didn't know that, these systems, these mechanisms can really have an impact. If you go to Khartoum, when I first did my visit, if you go to Khartoum in the Sudan, because he has been to Khartoum, you think that there's nothing wrong in the Sudan. If you go to the capital city, he said, "What is wrong?"
Yes.
You think there's nothing wrong, everything is okay. But then if you start going around, you go to places like, Darfur, East Darfur, South Darfur, Central Darfur, go to Cordova and Blue Nile State. I went to all these areas in relation to the conflict that was going on and the impact of what, the Sudan state was doing. I saw a lot. I saw poverty, deprivation. The IDP camps were appalling. If you see the water that people were drinking, and yet a lot of...
IDP? What is IDP?
Yes, and internal, the internal displaced camps. People in the, internally, they're usually, when they are, when there's conflict, and people do run away from these conflicts. And normally what usually happens is that the international community will never create camps. So that is internally displaced persons camps. Because, they are not refugees. People sometimes will, refugee in international law, refugee situation occurs when people travel across borders. Now, from one country to the other. But if they are just moving within, they are running away from one area to another area in the same country, they are internally displaced. They are not refugees. Because you cannot be a refugee in your own country. You can only be internally displaced in your own country. So you find out that, you find a lot of internally displaced persons camps, whereby, because of, bad things that are happening within the country, people, for example, in Nigeria, because of Boko Haram situation, you find out that there are a lot of IDP camps, internally displaced persons camps, which, whereby people are, now, I saw so many bad things. I mean, to the extent that, I mean, I felt really, really morally impelled. I mean, because as a UN independent expert, I mean, my hotel was in Sudan, was in Khartoum, the best of the hotels. Now, when you go and see all these things that are happening on ground, when I come back to my hotel, sometimes I cannot eat because I begin to think that, I mean, look, I mean, I've people now in this situation, and I come back, I'm now sitting in luxury and things like that. Here, you feel so much. If you think about it, I mean, it creates a lot of, I mean, moral, what do you call it? I mean, questions in your mind. Now,
what did you see? What did you see that because I want our listeners to understand, you know, that how bad stuff can get, you know. I think.
Well, I mean,
we need to.
the as I said, I mean, in the IDPs, the human conditions were really very bad, and I even up till now in some of my files, I mean, although there was a situation of warfare, I have a lot of photos of, I mean, human corpses, and I mean, there are so many bad things which, I mean, I don't really want to, I mean, start remembering them now. And I had very serious discussions. I mean, children, if you see the children, I mean, basic, simple things like, I mean, even children not being able to go to school, not having clean water to drink because of displacement. I mean, drinking, I mean, muddy waters. You know, we may underestimate these things that, well, these are not serious things. I mean, if you sit in London, one may think that, well, okay, it is their way of life. But does life have to be like that? Whereby simple basic things like clean water, you know, if you see what people eat, I mean, if you see in one of my reports, I indicated, I mean, the condition in which people live when there was rain, you know, the IDP camps, I mean, sometimes we're just people, I mean, they go to find just ordinary nylons from the, I mean, dumping grounds in order to cover the tent so that, I mean, they'll be safe from rain. I mean, little things like that. I mean, human beings should not, this, I mean, human beings with dignity should not be living under such, I mean, conditions. And one thing was, I mean, I think using the Islamic argument, you know, when I visit and take record of all these things, when I come back, it's a very fair system. Because when I come back, it's not like maybe you are taking notes in secrecy and then you are bringing it to the UN. The rules, the code of conduct of the independent expert, they are very transparent. Anything you see, you have to then come back and debrief. You meet the leaders of the state. You know, you meet the representative of the state and put this before them that, look, I've gone around your country and this is what I've seen. This is not really right. What are you doing about it? A lot of the time, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is what monitoring is about. It's about calling the attention of the state that there's something wrong. I mean, in relation to how, I mean, these people are being treated. And sometimes, initially in my first visit, you find out that the officers of the state, people in the Ministry of Justice, people will want to find excuses. And then when I saw what they were saying, they were always trying to find excuses and trying to make the argument of, well, you know, these treaties and things like that, the way, I mean, they are applying them. Then I just came back to their level. I said, look, you are Muslims, I'm Muslim. The situation of these people, are you saying, leave the treaties aside? Does Islam allow you to be here in Khartoum, you and I to be here in Khartoum? I mean, you know, this is you yourself, because you put them there. You know how people in Darfur are. You know how people in South Kordofan are. Leave UN treaties aside. Look at Islamic culture. Look at the Quran and the Sunnah. I tell them straight. I said, can you justify these situations? People under your rule, people you are governing. I mean, Can you justify this under Islam? And you see their faces will just drop. I said, you tell me. I said, you tell me. I mean, I'm a Muslim. I mean, let's talk one-to-one. You know, so that helped me a lot. When I first said that and they couldn't answer, you know, I said I think this argument is better than actually trying to push them on the treaties. So anytime everything we talk about, you know, I just bring Islamic comparatives. I said, well, but the Quran says this, but the Sunnah says this. So this is what actually helped me. and we put, a roadmap. I did a 10-year roadmap for them in order to improve the human rights situations, based on, and they really accommodated me because I was speaking the language they understood. I said, leave these treaties aside. The treaties are my own writings. I mean, I say that, there are a lot of common grounds. I say, as rulers, I quoted the Quran for them. For example, I said, Inna Allah ya'murukum an tuwaddul amanat ila ahliha. Allah commands you, because as leaders, you are in the position of trust, and Allah commands you that you should return the trust to the people who put you in authority by looking after them, by making them well. So all these type of arguments is some of that. There are a lot of areas of common ground, whereby sometimes when we want to put the politics into it, if it were somebody who didn't understand Islamic law, because there have been independent experts before me in the Sudan, there were some of them who were, because of the way they were only pushing a strict law, pushing the treaties. There was one independent expert before me who was sent away. He was considered persona non grata. Sudan said, no, you can never come to our country again, and things like that. But when I'm an independent expert, they really accommodated me because I was speaking their language. They knew, and I was challenging them based on their own beliefs, which were compatible with what the treaties were saying. So it's,
Right.
from that point of view, one will be able to see that, well, my own understanding of human rights, yes, it has its political side. And all countries, not only Western countries, all countries play the political game with human rights. But if you really want to do things right, you want to promote human dignity, I don't see much areas of difference between what we call human rights under international law today and those values that are promoted within Islamic sources. And I use that in the Sudan, and it worked very well for me.
And I think what is ironic is, if you look at the situation in Muslim countries at the moment, many Muslim countries do have, despotic regimes, corruption in their governments, and, basically dictatorships. And so Muslims, ordinary Muslim citizens, actually can benefit from human rights, and in a way need to benefit from them even more, because in the absence of somebody kind of holding people to account, these governments to account, they will do what they want with impunity. And it's not according to Islamic law. It's not according to any law. It's basically, self-preservation a lot of the time and things like that. So, we see that, for example, in many Muslim countries, people are locked up with, torture is normal, things like that. So, in other words, the ordinary Muslim actually can benefit from these laws, right?
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make, in the sense that, you are very, very right that in many Muslim majority countries today, the leaders, the way they behave, they are despots, and sometimes they will now, want to avoid their international human rights obligations by wrongly pleading Islamic law. They will say that, well, we are Muslims, you cannot, you can, this is our culture, and things like that. And that's exactly what made me take that position with the Sudan, because they were saying, no, we are Muslims, if you want to interpret these treaties, we are Muslims, our culture is Islam. And okay, is that what, okay, let us use Islam. So, it's important that, the Muslims, the ordinary Muslims, they can really benefit from human rights, especially from the Islamic point of view, to challenge the despots in place. Look at when the uprisings in the Arab Spring. It was very, very interesting. If you look at, the situation, if you look at the uprisings in Tunisia, Egypt, you find ordinary Muslims, they were saying freedom. They were doing the V sign, the freedom sign, and Allah Akbar at the same time. They would say freedom, Hurriya, Allah Akbar. You see, they were trying to show there, even though they might be doing it unconsciously, but I was reading into it, they are trying to show that, well, actually, our religion recognizes freedom, victory, and things like that. They were trying to combine all these slogans with Allah Akbar and and things like that. So if you look at it critically,
Yes.
if people have an understanding, a good understanding of human rights, and also appreciate the fact that, well, we can find, similar values within the culture, within the sources of Islam. They can use it to stand up to, regimes in their various countries who sometimes, violate their human rights. And trying to, use Islam as an excuse, as a defense. Now, a lot of the time, and I'm saying this cautiously, because I don't try to bring the issue of women usually up as the only example. But the issue of women's rights is quite very, very, important in relation to how women are treated in many of the Muslim, majority countries. And you find out that, a lot of the time, wrongfully, you find even some of the clerics, some of the rulers, they use Islamic law or Islamic culture as an excuse. There are some areas. People would argue, for example, that, well, women are not allowed to go out at all, or perhaps maybe women don't even have a right to work at all. I engage with this in the Sudan. I engage with, in other parts of the Muslim world. I engage with it. And al-bayyinatu ala al-muda'i, you have to bring your evidence. To really convince me that women can never go out at all, or perhaps maybe they are not allowed to work at all. And when we go into the debate and I start bringing alternative arguments from the sources of Islam, you find out that they may not agree, but fully with my perspective. They would then say, well, on this issue, sometimes they say, well, it's mas'ala ikhtilafiyya. It's an issue of difference. There's difference of opinion here. I prefer this. I say, well, if you prefer that opinion, you cannot say that my opinion is wrong as well. It's a valid and legitimate opinion. Which, so you cannot say, well, your view that women cannot go out completely should bind everybody. Because, there's an alternative legitimate view that, women and others can also argue to say that, well, even within Islam, yes, there's a view like this, which and this is what I normally say, that, if we look at even Islamic jurisprudence properly, we'll find, legitimate, human rights friendly views that, if we make people to understand, it can make life for everybody.
I guess there are two fears. Like, people, first of all, a lot of these things are cultural, aren't they? Like the cultural norms that people just assume are Islamic or something, right?
That's right, yeah.
But I guess there's this fear in Muslim countries, and I've talked to ulama who also have this fear, that by stealth, some of these human rights objectives. So of course, nobody's going to say to you, we don't care about women's rights. Nobody will say that. But what do you mean by women's rights? A lot of Muslim clerics or, ulama, they're a bit wary of the fact that, okay, is this bringing in by stealth anti-family value type culture, and an anti-family values culture? Because they look at Western countries and sometimes maybe stereotypically, but sometimes actually they see the breakdown of families. They see that marriage is not considered like the absolute norm, etc., etc. And they think, well, we don't want that. We don't want that to become the reality in our countries. And so there's a kind of suspicion there that, okay, are we opening the gates to that kind of thing?
Well, that's a fair point. But I normally do say in class and in my writings, even such perspective, the push in the West, I consider it to be a challenge. Islam and the Islamic rules, the Quran says it clearly that we have made you a nation of the middle path.
Right.
And that says that we should not go to the extreme on the right, nor the extreme on the left. Now, if, for example, the extreme left is pushing that you have to be completely like that, it does not mean that you have to run and go to the extreme right. I mean,
Yeah, so it's not all or nothing. You don't have to think all or nothing.
Exactly,
In other words.
exactly.
Right.
So it is. I mean, you find a balance. Every state does that, and that's exactly what we are saying. The Quran says clearly that you are a nation of a middle path. Those challenges would make you. Are we really? For you to reconsider where are we really? And then rather than running so far to the right and pushing people indoors, you can be able to balance and make sure that, well, no, we are not going as far as going far left. We want to be ummatan wasatan, as Allah said in the Quran. So I see it as a challenge. And challenges actually make you to look inward and see and evaluate yourself. So that's the way I say it.
Yeah, and also it's an unfair representation of Islamic law, because if you're clinging on to your culture and insisting that this is Islam, when Islam actually says something else, then that's also going to be counterproductive. It's also going to cause, for example, amongst women, dissatisfaction, desire to basically run away from Islam, right? Like, because you've kept telling women that this is Islam, but it's not. That's also counterproductive. Another area that people, I saw this video, Professor, during, unfortunately, recently we had the problems in Palestine. I saw a video, two videos. I saw one video where a Palestinian man in Gaza was standing in front of some corpses, some of the shuhada, and he was shouting at the cameras. He's like, obviously he was very, very upset about these people. They just went out for Eid and they got killed. And he was saying, "Where are you, oh countries of the world? Where are you, human rights? What's happened to your human rights? What happened to you, UN?" Then he called on the Arab countries, and he was in a very emotional and angry and upset state, and understandably so. But he was basically railing against this, I guess, double standards, or this idea that, it's one rule for everyone else, but nobody is taking care of our human rights. So there was that. Then I saw another video where a brother here in the West was saying something like, I don't know why Muslim countries or Muslims think they can resort to the UN because, okay, this is a bit extreme. He said, going to the UN is like going to Shaitan. So I'm just trying to show you, Professor, that there are these views, right, that are out there in popular culture where Muslims feel a type of frustration. Where do you think that frustration comes from? And is it justified?
I do appreciate that. Anytime we talk about the issue of human rights, particularly in relation to Muslim majority countries, I encounter it all the time. The situation in Palestine will always come up. And if you see in my writings as well. And that's one area where, issue of, the politics of human rights. And even many Western writers do acknowledge that, it is in the politics of human rights that, the trouble of human rights lies. And the politics usually is in relation to double standards. And it relates to power. I've written in one of my, papers in relation to, there are some within the West. They find a way around. When you talk about the Palestinian situation, there are some commentators who say that, well, the situation happening in Palestine is a political issue, not a human rights issue. You find out that, this is just semantics in relation. And I do argue against that seriously, that, look, no. Even if it has a political foundation, the consequences, there are a lot of human rights violations that needs to be approached. Now, the other point I want to indicate is, that's the issue of double standards. And people have written about it. It is very, very clear, but it relates to power. Now, when we talk about the UN, look, people need to appreciate the fact that the UN is not a monitoring institution. It's not a global government. It's not a world government. It is made up of individual nation states that come together to say, now the UN itself doesn't have an army. Now, if you say that, well, the UN forces that goes to places where conflicts are, they are contributed by nation states. If the UN calls and countries indicate that they don't want to, send soldiers, the UN is handicapped. Now, the UN is run by a lot of funds. The money has to come from state. They don't have any money. They don't print money. It is just an agreement of coming together. People need to understand how the UN works, and it does work. Things will have been things will have been worse than this if there was no organization that like the United Nations. I know, the difficult issues of the world are usually used to judge the UN, saying that the UN is not working. But there are so many areas that actually, the UN works. Sometimes, look, for example, if you, yes, the Palestinian situation is very, very bad, and we all comment about it, that it should be better. And we all know, the powers at work in that regard. Now, the US, for example, has a very strong political, position in that regard. But if you look at the UN, you'll be able to see that in relation to UN resolutions, and this is what people talk about, the fact that UN only speaks, they don't bite. Israel has most of the UN General Assembly resolutions, is in relation, Israel has the highest number, of UN resolutions criticizing it. And this is why Israel does not love the United Nations. It always, but when you come to the Security Council, because of the way the Security Council is structured, if a country that the US vetoes anything, it doesn't go anywhere. And we know the position of the United States in that regard. It's a very, tricky political situation.
Why do some countries have veto power and others not?
That's historical in the sense that, it's historical in the sense that, when the UN was created after the Second World War, the Allied states, it was the states who were very powerful then, and they were trying to say that, okay, balance of power. Now, for example, the Big Five, indicating that they don't want one state, any one of the powerful states to be able to impose its will, upon. So if, for example, there has to be, a sort of, consensus among all the five big powers. So if one power vetoes, then it means there's no consensus, because they have certain fears in that regard. It was set up with the intention that the nation states will operate in good faith. But now you find out that the veto, the power of the veto, which was created then in order to ensure that particularly in relation to the rule of use of force, are agreed upon by consensus. It is not actually being used in order to stunt situations like those in Palestine, in order to get things right. And there have been a lot of agitation, not only from Muslim majority countries, even from African countries, indicating that where the dynamics of the world today has changed. Therefore, that rule has to be revisited. That is, there's a need for the reform of the security. There have been for so many years, more than 10 years now, even Western writers, people are talking about, well, look, if you look at the political nature of the world today, there's a need to reform the Security Council. But the rules of changing itself is really very intricate, because if one nation one of the big powers vetoes, you cannot reform. So it's like a vicious cycle. There's a calls for reform, indicating that, well, there's need for a better balance of power. But we are stuck with it. In a way that perhaps maybe people are still really scratching their head in finding a way of how that reform, can be corrected. I agree with you. It's problematic. It's really, really particularly in relation to the Palestinian situation. Now, calling the UN shaitan, I think is just, polemical.
Yeah.
It's really very polemical.
But I'm trying to show you that sentiment exists. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yes, I do. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm not referring to you, but I'm referring to that sentiment, because we have to. If we look at the so many things good that the UN does, it will be. The UN, for example, if you look at the situation in Bosnia, then the UN played a very, very. Look at the situation of the Rohingyas in.
I know that people remember Srebrenica. You see,
exactly.
But they remember that there were UN soldiers, peacekeepers there, who basically, abandoned the camp of Muslim men and boys, leaving them to was it Radko Mladic to basically massacre, right? So they remember that and they think, well, what did the UN do? You know, and I think that ends up becoming the lasting impression of
on
the
people's mind.
UN,
That's
that the UN abandons Muslims when it comes to the crunch. You know, whether they're white Muslims or whether they're brown Muslims, it doesn't matter. You know, the Muslims of Bosnia were white Muslims, right? I think people. What I'm trying to say is that's what ends up being the lasting impression. You know.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. I mean, and it's sometimes it's difficult. It's like it depends on who is making the argument. One will be able to find evidences here and there. I mean, to support whichever. But the point I'm trying to make is that, I mean, the United Nations, I think it's a necessary institution. Now, otherwise, many of the bad things that we see happening today could have been worse. Except, of course,
like what good did they do in Bosnia? I just want to know, like, what would you say are the good things that the UN managed to do?
Even let me tell you something now. For example, even in relation to a UN organization, for the UN, for example, even adopting, one could say that, well, it's political. Adopting a resolution saying that this is our position, that we do not support this. We do just that statement coming from the UN.
It's a type of Amr bil Ma'ruf, isn't it? Like, it's a type of making a statement of where we stand.
Exactly, it's powerful. It's very, very powerful. And I mean, people can make reference to it, indicating that, well, okay, well, if a state, if the whole of the UN has resolved like this, and a state may be because of its power, or maybe because of its ally, I mean, a country like the United States, I mean, does something contrary to that. I mean, it has political implications in relation to the fact that, well, you cannot actually say that, well, you are a state that is, I mean, international law compliant. You know, people can use it against them. These are, even those resolutions are powerful, but a lot of the time people don't see that. I mean, I do. I mean, for example, in many of my writings, you'll be able to see that. I mean, in making one's arguments, you are able to refer to those resolutions as the position of the international community. A lot of the time, people talk about the position of the international community on this issue was this, and therefore, if I mean a particular country is acting contrary to that, they are actually acting contrary to international law, even though they might say that they are the best compliers with international law. The record says differently. It has, I mean, in international discourse, in international debate, it's very powerful, you know.
I guess people wish that there was teeth to it, though. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, this is exactly what we are saying in relation to having the teeth to it. For that to happen, you know, perhaps, I mean, we also have to try as much as possible to talk about particular countries, not the UN itself. Now, talk to countries, I mean, to provide the resources for the UN to be able to do its work. When you say that, well, there's need, if, for example, if there are atrocities happening somewhere, you know, and there's need for soldiers, maybe, for example, in order to try to stem those issues. As I said, the UN will call for, I mean, peacekeeping forces, and this will be contributed by nation states. If they don't contribute, what do you want the UN to do? They cannot create our soldiers. They cannot create human beings. I mean, it is so, rather than accusing the United Nations, let us look at the detail and see, for example, in this type of situation, and look, another thing is that, I mean, the UN a lot of the time, I mean, it's because of the arrangements of nationhood. Now, the UN actually, how things work, you can even if there are forces available, the UN cannot go into any state except things are very, very bad, and also it goes back to the Security Council to be able to determine that there's a humanitarian situation in a particular country. That is when perhaps maybe they can enter by force. Now, if no matter what is happening in a state, they can only enter with the consent of that state. Because you don't want to create more war in order to solve one. What if the state says that, okay, we are not allowing, if you come, we will bomb you. For example, it creates, so the concept of the state is a very important factor, which a lot of people do not know. Now, if you say that, okay, the UN is not doing anything, go to Bosnia. Bosnia says you cannot come. You cannot cross our borders. They have to start negotiating a lot behind this in order to have a peaceful entry. They cannot force their way by war. Say, okay, we want to overtake you in order to save other people. It will create more problems. It's a very dynamic situation whereby, a lot of the time I think that the UN is not doing much. But behind the scene, they do have a lot of political talking to create humanitarian corridors for aid workers to be able to go through peacefully. They cannot force it's by the consent of the state. For example, the work that I said I did in the Sudan, I couldn't go to Sudan if Sudan said that no, even though the UN has appointed, you cannot come to our country. A lot of it, for example, there was an independent expert who was appointed for Iran. For the whole 6 years, Iran did not allow them to come in. They said, no, we don't want you to come in. So they were gathering their evidence by visiting neighboring countries and speaking to Iranian refugees who have left Iran. Now, when we were discussing in the UN, I said that is not actually also very good. Because if you don't allow people to come in to see actually what is on the ground, the presumption of the international community is that you are hiding something. But the UN cannot force itself in if the state says, no, you cannot come in. So there are a lot of dynamics. I mean,
yeah. And I guess people also think about things like Iraq, what happened in Iraq. Like, even though the UN didn't, it wasn't a legal war, the West, Britain, America, they didn't really care, didn't really care what the UN said at the end of the day, and went and did what they wanted anyway, right? So there's also that dynamic there, which confuses people, I guess.
Yes, I mean, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of, power dynamics within the international community, which, it's not ideal, but there's a statement in international law whereby sometimes, we don't want to say it much, but in certain situations, it's about facing the fact. Do you get the point? Facing the fact. Now, if, for example, when we know the position of during the invasion of Iraq, we know the position of the UN on it. There's a lot of resolutions in relation to, that, the UN was still deliberating, and, the Americans just overnight were announcing that they have started invading Iraq. They know they were going contrary, serious, and there are a lot of materials on it that it was a violation of international law. Now, where that happens, we just have to face the fact. What can be done? Than other the UN saying that, well, we do not support this, that invasion is contrary to. No, you just have to face the fact, because it's about power dynamics. It is true that certain countries are powerful than others, and sometimes when they want to become rogue states, what can you do? You just talk about it that, well, you are just a rogue state, what you are doing is wrong. If you do not have their firepower, what it's just about facing the fact, isn't it? And then maybe you continue to pray. When they have exhausted themselves, then they leave. But then history will continue to talk about it. That's just the issue.
Yeah, it's like George Galloway, the MP, he said the only despots or the only war criminals that get brought to account are the failed war criminals, the ones who, the rest of them carry on, in their doing the lecture circuit.
Unfortunately, that's the world in which we live. It's a world. The UN Charter, the United Nations, principles promote the ideal in relation to this is how things have to be done. We want to have, peaceful coexistence between nation states. The UN, with international law theoretically says that wars are prohibited, that there can be no more wars, that there can only be what are called conflicts. And when conflicts occur, because conflicts can be resolved, there are no more wars. But in reality, wars do happen. Even though in international law, a lot of the time we don't refer to them as wars, we say they are conflicts, because of the fact that, ideally, the rules of warfare, you don't just take your enemy by surprise. There have to be a declaration of war before you start moving. But all those rules are considered to be archaic now. I mean, so you find that the rules, international law rules, they promote the ideal, but in reality, for example, it says that all nation states it promotes the concept of equality of nation states. It says all nation states are equal. That's the ideal in the UN Charter. But in reality, we know that some states are powerful than others. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
So it is promoting an ideal. So you have to, understand that this is the ideal we are pushing at, but sometimes the reality stares us in the face. When the reality stares us in the face, we cannot point the idea and say that ideal is wrong. No, we are still pushing. We want that ideal to happen, even though in reality, there could be situations that, contradict the ideal.
So in other words, instead of, being idealistic and thinking, okay, we don't have a perfect system, we should be trying to minimize the harm and maximize the good that we can get from these regimes, right?
That is indirectly the point one is trying to make. That
and it's kind of the only option as well, right? In a way.
Well, hopefully, I wouldn't say, perhaps maybe, who knows, down the road, maybe the world will learn a lesson, including the Muslim states, including the Western countries, because there's a lot of, problems all over. Maybe we'll learn and see that, well, this system, the reality, the way states behave and things like that, as rogue states, it's not really helping anybody. And then perhaps maybe, common sense will prevail and we can have a better system down the road somewhere.
The OIC and Muslim countries, getting together, coming to common grounds, having treaties. People also highlighted, for example, during this latest, the latest problems in Palestine, the lack of action from the OIC. A lot of words, a lot of, shaking fingers at people, but nothing really, nothing tangible, right? What are your reflections on the OIC and Muslims coming together to make human rights treaties? Isn't there a conflict there? Because, a lot of the Muslim countries, they're going to be very conscious of self-preservation in terms of, if they're, for example, dictatorships and kings and things like that, right? They're going to be more concerned about preserving their kingdoms. So if they come together to work on treaties, I don't know how effective those treaties or how sincere they will be. What are your reflections on the OIC? And also, just to end, what would you like all Muslims to appreciate about human rights and Islamic law, and maybe how they could interact or contribute?
Well, thank you so much. The OIC, basically, I would think it's a good idea. It was created due to the arson that occurred in the Masjid al-Aqsa, and the Muslims thought, Muslim countries thought they should come together. 57 countries, which I think, there is power in the collective, but as we say, a lot of things can be done better. Now, if you look at the OIC Charter, they have, revised it again. There are a lot of ideals in it, which one would say is good. But then it goes back again to, the political will and the practicals. You talk about the fact that, the leaders are despots and they want to self-preservation. And that is the politics. And that's the reality. A lot of the time, when we look at things strictly from an Islamic point of view, we look at it from the presumption that, Muslim leaders will be ideal, that they will be like saints. But human beings are human beings.
Yeah.
Exactly. Human beings are human beings. Political leaders are the same everywhere. Now, the truth of the point is this: I'm not trying to blame, the predecessors. Even if you look down the barrel of Islamic political organization right until after the Prophet's death, we will see pockets of leaders who will say that, and this is what is called siyasa. Siyasa, sasa yasusu. You know what siyasa, the term siyasa means? I mean, it means, you know, a wood eater. You know, there's an insect that eats wood. It eats it little by little, little by little. You don't know that the wood is already dying. By the time you know, the wood just falls down. Siyasa, that is eating things up little by little, little by little. That's politics. So whether it's religious, people who are religious, people who are unreligious, siyasa is siyasa. People want to self-preserve. And this is why, I mean, sometimes this type of debate we are talking about is good. The populace will have to continue to talk. And that brings me to the second part of your question, human rights. You know, people should be able to, when they are leaders, I mean, they should be able to speak truth to power using the language of human rights, using Islamic values. They remind them. They may not completely become ideal, but they will know that people know that, well, at least, I mean, there are some values that has to be protected and things like that. So human rights, I believe, I mean, not only Muslim, all human beings can benefit from it. It's an ideal which we should continue to. I will not support its condemnation, whether by Muslims or non-Muslims. We have to, there are a lot of common grounds. We have to use it as a platform to challenge rulership, to speak truth to power. Whether they are rulers in Muslim majority countries, whether they are rulers in Western countries, when they do things that violate, whether it's the OIC, whether it's the UN, when they do things that violate, I mean, the principles of human dignity, we should be able to talk to them that, look, I mean, this is wrong and that is wrong. It's not about condemning a whole institution, but pointing out where things have gone wrong because of the fact that, I mean, there will be some other areas where, I mean, they are doing things right. The OIC can do better in the area of human rights, but in the areas of bringing the Muslim majority countries together, in the areas of, for example, Islamic finance, setting rules and things like that, they are doing some very good work. And the areas of speaking up, you know, they are doing some very good work. But as I said, you know, these are all ideals that we should all cherish, even though sometimes the practicalities that confront us, you know, do the contrary. And that is where we can use the language of human rights to speak truth to power. And I believe that, I mean, that will also have its impact.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Professor Baderin. I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you. And I must say that your class at Soas has been very inspiring and thought-provoking. And I think for many of us, you've really given us a nuanced look at this whole topic, where perhaps previously we had a bit of a, you know, black and white view of it. So we really appreciate, you know, your expertise, your knowledge, and sharing, you know, and empathizing with the way I think Muslims have been thinking about this, while at the same time trying to, you know, change people's minds. And I think that's one of the great things that your work is doing. So thank you so much. Jazakallah khairan.
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, Fatima, thank you so much really for having me. And I think, I mean, your broadcast is really very helpful. I'm really honored to be on it. And I hope that perhaps, I mean, I've been able to make a contribution that will perhaps maybe open people's mind to reflect over possibilities. I'm not saying everything is ideal, but I mean, if we reflect deeply on things, we'll be able to see there are pockets of light here and there that we can stand at and make things better. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Jazakallah khairan. And I hope that in the I can, you know, collaborate with you in the future as well. I would really be honored to be able to do that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much.
Okay then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So, dear brothers and sisters, alhamdulillah, we've come to the end of this episode. So much to think about, so much to look into. Please do look into Professor Baderin's books. You can just look them up online. You know, a lot of the material is out there. Also, his journal articles, etc. And leave a comment and let me know what you thought about this discussion. It is a nuanced discussion. Might be a bit controversial to some people, but you know, we need to get educated and understand these issues in depth and not have a superficial understanding of these things. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. You've been listening to Ummah Talk with Fatima Barkatullah. Please share this episode, please leave a comment, and let us know what you think about the issues that we've discussed. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.